Hey guys, so just recorded a video where I was explaining all the spiritual, psychological, intertwined changes that are happening with me. And I recently put that video on explaining my thoughts on the concept of a prosperity gospel. And I don't want anyone to misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying humans shouldn't be prosperous and comfortable. I'm saying selling God as a means to prosperity is false because it's selling fulfillment in material objects instead of fulfillment in God. If you have fulfillment in God, you don't need, as one of the pastors I referenced in you don't need a $20 million mansion with its own private airport. You don't need it. You'll know when it happens when you face metanoia, the word which was translated to repentance, but originally means transformation of the heart, which is what John the Baptist asked of you. Metanoia, metanoia. You'll understand this because it's not that wealthy people are bad. It's not what it is. The idea is that selling God as a means to gain wealth, or that you need all this material comfort to be happy, is where the problem lay. The solutions to the world's problem lay in sharing. And the problems on the planet, I've always known this from a young age, fall to that. And if you take it very literal, and you took people who have very extravagant lifestyles, now it's not to say they can't have them, people can. But if you've got a sheik somewhere with so many billions of dollars, I saw a guy who wrote his name in the earth just so as he could see it from space. That's just ego, it's just pure ego. And this is prosperity gospeling on many of these pastors. That's where they are with it. It's that style, it's that way. Now those people have so much money. If you sat them in a large fenced compound with all of this money, and around there you put starving children, the polarity would be very clear that they should do something. They should pass something over that compound fence, over the walls that they're inside, and feed those children. And it would be very obvious. So that's the whole point that I'm getting at. It's a transformation. It's not that you can't be in prosperity, And I want to show you how God taught me this. And I'm going to use 3 stories to try and do that from my life. So you might have heard them. The first story, I was devout in the means that God will provide when I got here for everything. And God stopped me doing that after a while, but it was a good way for me to learn. Now, I took this from George Muller, predominantly, as well as a friend of mine called Lynn Gessing. And they are fully dependent on God, and I admire and envy that. And even today, I want to be that way. I don't want to feel any self-importance that I must do YouTube to get ensure donations come. This is too egoic and faithful, a lack of faith there, but to some degree that will take a transition because there is now a setup like that has occurred. Now, when I first got here, I wouldn't spend money on myself. I was so set on this. Now, you have to bear in mind that I came from a background of lying, cheating, stealing, gambling, drugs, and crime. These are all things I partook in to get ahead in life. I wasn't proud of any of it. That's why I surrendered and gave my life to God. Now, when I came here, I was so set on that, I said, all of these people around me are far more worthy than I. That's how I viewed it. And that was off the back of feeling the things I'd done were wrong. And it's true of the children. Every child is more worthy than I here, and still is to this day, is how I see it. So after a while, Fritzi first met me. We joke about it. I had holes in my shoes. My toes were sticking out the end of my shoes. But I had only income coming in for the children. Now, of course, I could have took some and said I need to get paid so I can get clothing, etc. I'm not doing this to make myself look, and it's not what I'm doing it for. I'm doing it to explain how things worked for me back then. And I stayed stringently, and I said to God, I don't know how I'm supposed to do this, but I'm not going to use money for those kids on myself. So we'll have to find a way around this. And I wasn't comfortable with taking a salary. And that's how it was. And literally, I left. Fritzy met me for 2 weeks, and then we both left. I went on Thursday, she went on the Friday back to Europe. And that was the first time we met before we fell in love. Well, we kind of fell in love anyway. And all my clothes were ruined. Wholly rotten shoes were ruined. And I flew to England, and I was waiting there in the airport, and my bags didn't come. And I thought to myself, well, this is brilliant, because all my belongings were in there, including my small laptop. So like, I was actually in trouble at that point due to it. So I spoke to KLM, and I explained why I was in Tanzania, and that I had a limited time space because I was going back in 2 weeks' time. And the girl at the call center really felt for me, and she sped things up, and they sent me a check for €1,500 and said, replace your wardrobe, we don't think we're going to find this. Then my running shoes had gone missing, and a friend, James Bayland, came and said he had some shoes to donate to start a running club with the kids. And they were my size, and I said, can I use some for myself? And he said yes. So I ended up with running shoes that I'd lost. I ended up with clothing, and then the day before I flew, my bag appeared, and KLM just didn't want their money back. And I had all the old clothes to bring back to Tanzania to use for work with the dogs, etc. And I got my little laptop back as well. So I held stringent, and God made a way. The universe made a way. Now, I carried on that way, and I want to go back to that way to some degree. I never used to ask for money. I would just make videos about what was happening. I didn't have a fundraising platform, so I just make videos and hope people would reach out and share. And I was living in a storeroom when the disabled kids first moved in. Outdoor storeroom, full of rats. It was horrible. It was just a bed. People would come in and get beans and flour while I was sleeping. It was just the worst time. And I was really quite depressed. And my phone rang. We were flat broke. We were struggling. Didn't have the equipment we needed for the disabled kids. And I thought, this is dumb. Like, I'm making a big mistake here. And the phone rang, and it was a lady called Claudia. And Claudia asked me how much money I needed. And I told her £30,000 because I needed a vehicle, didn't have a 4-wheel drive. I needed to renovate the house. I needed to build a washing area. And I needed to get some accommodation for myself as well on site. So she said okay, and she went, and I thought, oh, I've blown that. I've said too large a sum. It's the biggest donation I ever got. 10 days later, she rang. She said, look in your bank account, and there was £30,000 there. Now, I messed up. I spent all that money, and I didn't build myself accommodation, so I was still in the same storeroom, feeling pretty sorry for myself and kicking myself somewhat, because I had this strange broken attitude, because I felt that everybody deserved it more than me, which was wrong, but that's how I was. I've navigated that now. And another guy, Stuart, who's become a friend of ours, a dear friend as well, and helped us so much, he contacted me, and he's a professional gambler. He was, he's not now. And he said, what do you need more than anything? And so I need extra accommodation. At the time we really did as well, because Daniel had moved in, the blind boy, and in the children's home he wasn't progressing, so the light's fading, I'm sorry. So he had to come and live, he was living with me, so the storeroom wasn't going to work, so we needed to get something built. So I built 3 rooms. I built a bedroom, an office, and a toilet. And that's where I ended up living for most of my life in Feathersdale. That's why I lived in those 3 rooms. Daniel did move in with me for a while, but that had to come to a close because he was quite aggressive, and he used to wake me up and scratch me and bite me. And we hired, when we got more money, 2 full-time women to look after him. And Fritzy was there at that point, and she was helping with Danny as well. For all we weren't together and married, so we're in separate beds. So she would take Danny sometimes as well. And anyway, I carried on with that attitude, and a friend of mine here said, "John, you have to look after yourself. You're going too far." And we went. My friend said, "Go to a lodge and relax this weekend because the stress is going to be too much for you." And it was too much. I was very ill with stomach problems coming from stress. And you can't see me at all, can you? And we went with a child, Monica, a Maasai child who is now a guardianship, but she does have a mum, and her mum visits a lot. You'll just have to not see me. And I took my sons, Faraji, Achille and Dominic, and we all went to the lodge. And we spent $40 on meals and swimming and juices. We now get that for free at that lodge, by the way. Not the food, but we get the swimming and all that sort of stuff for free. And they're wonderful, wonderful friends of ours, Remy and Digvijay at Chanya Lodge, which means positive in Swahili. And I spent $40, and when I left, this is how bad I was, wired in my brain. I felt an overwhelming sense of guilt that I'd taken $40 from someone in the community, some children perhaps, because at that time still wasn't getting any income, but I was definitely getting ill, and I was still getting a little money from my parents, but I would keep that. My family would send me a little for a while. I would keep that for flying, and I felt desperately guilty. And I was driving and I was saying, "Good God, I'm so sorry I've wasted $40. You know, I know that a family could support a household for a month on that in Uchira, and I'd had one day out with the kids, and it was wonderful and so relaxing. And I did need that because I'm from Europe, and sitting out in a normal Tanzanian place, people come and bother me and where I'm from. And thus in a lodge, no one bothers you. There's a lot of people on holiday and it's familiar, you know, you get some different conversation from your own culture, etc. as well." So we drove to town to the supermarket because I'd promised the kids I'd get them some cashew nuts to watch a movie on the night. And we were driving to town, and in my head I was saying, "God, I'm sorry, I won't do that again. I've made a big mistake." And when we got to the supermarket, I had Monica in my arms. She's a tiny little thing, and an Indian guy walked by and she held out her hand like this, and he smiled and came over and he said, "Did you adopt her?" And I said, "No, but I'm her guardian. I'm not fully adopted, but I know her mother. Her mother couldn't look after her out in the Maasai at TPC." And I told him who we were and about Feather's Tail. And it's never happened to me in Tanzania, ever, since or before. He opened his wallet and he pulled out a $100 bill and he handed it to me and he said, "That's for your children." And off he walked. I've never seen him since. I don't know who he is. But I know there was an angel, a photon travelling on an angle of light went into that man and delivered that message from God. And that was when God told me, "You have to look after yourself. You have to understand that, because otherwise you're going to be of no use to me." And it's become very evident to me living where we are at present, because I was living in a very stressful situation in Feather's Tail for the whole time I was there. And now living where I live, it's much less stressful, and it's a higher standard of living, and it's helping me to heal. And if it were not for moving here and having a little more of a prosperous lifestyle and the high walls to protect us from all the stress of life here that we have in the village, and living in the poverty where we were, and everybody always, I couldn't even get to my car in Feather's Tail without somebody waiting to ask you for help for something, be they from Feather's Tail or outside of Feather's Tail. So that was like really, really tiring. So now I'm here, and one of our UK trustees has just arrived, Salman, who is from Bahrain, but he's a UK trustee. And now I'm here, and my message is for this video simply, God will make ways that you can't imagine, and He wants you to live with a level of comfort. He doesn't want you to fear comfort. But at the same time, the idea of the prosperity gospel is that you need to rack up a load of material wealth to help people. And in my experience, this is not true. Money is a means to serve, to help. It's not a means to adorn yourself with private jets and everything. And I want to revert back our charity a little bit more to that faith-based side of things, because I don't want to feel like I have to ask for money all the time. I want us to come and rely on prayer some more. Hey, Karibu, I just finished recording this, yeah? I want to rely more on prayer than on having to post, having to open fundraising pages and physically ask. And that's something I'm reconnecting with due to being ill. And I think it's a very important thing to reconnect with, because there was a poem from Charlie Chaplin, my wonderful Fritzy, posted the other day, and there's a little quote from there I'll put at the end of this video, because I feel I'd gone into the structure of the charity, and in doing so, to some small degree, not hugely so, I went against who I am to try and fulfill desires of something I was not, and to try and often mimic the models of other charities that were not based on the way I built this. And there are many NGOs around me here with far more staff than I, and I've known them since I got here. They were established when I got here, and they haven't grown like we have. It's not a competition by any measure. But I think the only key difference is that we relied on God. And I want to make sure, and I wonder if being sick allows me to fall back to ensure that we do rely on God. Because if a man like George Muller can only pray, and a woman like my friend Lynn Gissing, who has a book called A Light in Africa you can buy on Amazon, can only pray. And George Muller in the 1800s can raise £100 million in money in our terms today with prayer and never advertising. And my friend Lynn can survive as long as she has through prayer alone, and in a profoundly powerful way. Then now that we have the YouTube and there are means for people to cross that bridge, then let me rely back on the thing that brought me here, the foundation of everything we are: prayer and my God. God bless, guys. You can't see me, I know, but God bless.